Fortran did sponsor us today, so if you see someone from Fortran, Pat, Joseph, thank them for the pizza, very generous sponsorship. All right, so I'm going to introduce you again to Pat Viafore. He's our other organizer, and he's going to introduce you to the panel.
Hey guys, I am moderating today's panel, which means I am terrified, so you're going to bear with me. Today we're going to talk about Python 3, specifically how we got here, what we can do better, what we like about it, what we may not like about it. Nobody doesn't like Python 3, let's be honest.
Here, here.
I'd like to introduce you to the panel. Gentlemen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Not everyone at first. Come on.
Okay, I'll bite this bullet. I'm Chris King. How many of you here work with me? Raise your hand. Excellent. So I work over there at Hudson Alpha, just a hop, skip, and a jump across that pond in a short while. I am the systems engineer for HPC systems over there. If you run bioinformatics code or large end workload, you will eventually encounter me over there. I've been in this industry for like, I guess 10 years now and using Python for at least a good 3 or 4 of it. It's quickly become like the one tool that I recommend for I don't know, the 80% case.
I'll take the next slide. I'm Morgan Humes. I work here at Anderton. I've run around doing Python over the years here and other companies, but largely at Anderton we use it for testing our embedded software and using it from a feature team as far as like, PyTest or from a automation for tooling from our pipelines and so forth. So I know a few people here.
My name is Blake Anderton. I work at Torch Technologies, and I also have some side efforts involved in web technologies. All of these use Python in various capacities, and we've typically seen progressively the argument for Python as being enterprise ready progress as Python 3's capabilities come online. My background isn't in software engineering per se. It's mostly in the uses of Python by analysts, scientists, those types of things. But from 15, 16 years of using Python, say it really has helped lower the abstraction barrier and make us users of Python more able to focus on what the code is supposed to do than the internals of the code, as well as exposing the internals when there's capability that we use.
I'm Cliff Taylor. I work for Irish Technologies, small defense contractor here in Huntsville. Been doing defense for about 10 years here, using Python off and on for about 15. And I'm at about the same place that Chris is, where I found that Python is good for about the 80% case. If I could just convince all of my MATLAB users and my simulation developers to believe that, then I'd be doing great. But that's essentially what it is. It very slowly convert people over to Python in the defense world.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So I'd like the audience to ask questions at any time. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Joseph has a mic. He's going to come find you. Stand up. I'll see you, and I'll try to interrupt them. It's very tough to interrupt these guys, but I'll try, and then you can ask your question. So feel free to ask questions you have about Python 3 or Python 2 if you want to argue with them. I think a few of these guys like to argue.
No, never.
So I'll kick things off. So we have Python 2 dying in 10 months, 5 days, 12 hours, and some minutes. This is the Python deadline. What are your guys' thoughts about Python 2 going away? What does it mean?
I'm not convinced yet. It'll probably come back, just like it did previously.
It's the Terminator, you're saying?
Yes.
It will.
Unfortunately, that may be true, because there's a lot of people using air systems that aren't going to move away from Red Hat 7 for a few years, so it may get stretched out until when Red Hat 7 dies. I think we'll be okay.
It'll still make me cry when I still see it 10 years from now.
Yeah.
No. When Red Hat 8 comes out, you'll still have the people on Red Hat 6 waiting for like the CentOS vault to expire. Then they'll begrudgingly move on to 7. Oh yeah, they still have.
That's really optimistic that they're only on still at 6. It might be.
I know a couple of people still. In fact, I think I just encountered a CentOS 5 machine this morning.
But it's time, I mean, I think I started using Python in 2.2, and it was probably 2002.
So you had dictionaries back then?
like handwritten. They were handwritten, but yes.
So, I mean, So for those of you who don't know, Python 2 is going to be end of life in 2020, and so what that means is the security updates won't be pushed out. Do you guys think there should be anything more that they're trying to do in order to get Python 2 out of the ecosystem?
I mean, I like the efforts that pip has taken. Now when you install pip on Python 2, I've started seeing like the nastygrams. You know, by the way, hey, did you know Python 2 is going away? Hey, I'm going to put this message in red. I hope you read it.
Some of us, as far as like the Python 2.7 issues, I've seen there's some legacy support packages. In my domain, we use a 3D viewer, pair view. I'm sure there are many other packages that have Python tie-ins, but I suspect that's probably where a lot of the friction will come as far as some of these applications that are tied to 2.7. But then again, I would welcome the pressure for those applications to finally get their game together and migrate forward to something. So we'll probably see a lot of healthy chaos in that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. That's like most things in Python, the Python community is really what's going to be driving this. And we're already seeing a lot of libraries are dropping support for Python 2 going forward. Like 2019's last year, we're not updating any more Python 2 code. It's all free from here on. And so I think it'll be like the adoption of moving from 2 to 3, where we actually, it might take a couple of years before everybody jumps on the bandwagon, because nobody really wants to abandon their users.
So I think we got our first audience question. Adam, what do you got?
Yeah, my question is, Python 2.7 says that, I mean, the community says they won't maintain it. Does that mean they're going to stop patching security bugs, or they're going to stop new development, or, and how does a community prevent developers from continuing to plug along with something that's got that much traction?
I mean, can we stop anyone from doing bad things? Not really. If you want to keep rolling Python 2.7 until the end of the day, it's like, I feel sorry for you.
I'm working on code written in Fortran 90 right now, so I mean, that tells you something about developers. So, I mean, no, there's no way we can stop it. And for that matter, Python's open source. So officially there's no more support for Python, but if somebody decides that it's important enough to them, and you know, a company like a Northrop Grumman or a Lockheed or a Boeing wants to throw money at it, they can support it. They can add their own security updates. They can backport the changes from Python 3 into Python 2. I mean, there's nothing we can do to stop that, and that we shouldn't want to necessarily stop that. But as a community, the official support is moving forward.
So now I think you'll just see unofficial security patches per se. It'll just be harder to use Python 2.7 in a secure way. It'll just be easier to go to Python 3 and not maintain it, unless you really have another company you must stick with Python 2.7. Like, it's actually now a trade-off. Now each individual company has to actually weigh the cons.
And you also have to consider, you know, pip packages going away will start making your life harder. I mean, there's going to be pressure from different directions. You know, vendors dropping in.
Has pip stated they're going to eliminate the packages that they have?
Did that happen? Does anyone know?
I have not seen anything.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it specifically.
The question was, is pip going to start eliminating those Python 2 packages? So one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people say, well, I don't have a reason to go to Python 3. So I'm going to ask you guys, why do you think Python 3 matters?
I see you have that image on your computer. Can we put that up now? I like that. This is how I feel about people that are like really on board the Python 2 train. This is fine. The house is burning down, but your coffee's warm.
Well, in fairness, the house isn't quite on fire yet. You can still get patches. You can still...
Yeah, the paint hasn't peeled off quite yet.
See, it's okay.
They haven't declared the house condemned just yet. They just put a notice on the front door, that's all.
So Python, there's a couple of big reasons that Python 3 is important. First, that this might not matter in my community because we're looking at the defense community, although that is, this is slowly changing because we're supporting international contracts. So internationalization means Unicode. And if you want to support Unicode, you need to be using Python 3. It's just too difficult to do in Python 3.
And that particular feature I see is kind of a general theme in the moving to Python 3. I mean, abstractly, 10,000-foot view, the way I see it is Python 3 takes a huge step towards Python being a viable enterprise-ready solution. Everything from typing, Unicode, support, asynchronous capabilities. I mean, the way I would see it is an organization is going to have to look at this and say, are we going to take the acute near-term pain of tackling these, migrating over and having an incapability after all these transitions that will better position us for growth, path forward, not to mention developer support? Or are we going to spend our efforts maintaining what we've already walked through with Python 2.7? I think that's going to be, the way I see it is that's a strong litmus test for the organization's decision-making capabilities.
Well, so I'll add a question to that. Do you feel like Python 2.7 is embedded enough in products to actually be a barrier to adopting Python 3?
I think it can be. Just some examples. There's one for YouTube description, Python's 2017 Instagram walkthrough, how they had to, the pains they went through with that. Many of their cases where, as you mentioned, a simple Unicode error in a test case was something that set them back several weeks trying to figure out why the test case failed. It was just because of the Unicode support. So I think, like I said, if you're looking at, what is a near-term patch that can kind of stop the bleeding and keep us moving forward with what we have, those types of organizations, that type of decision-making will opt more for back support of Python 2. But again, I don't necessarily think that's healthy. If you're really looking at outside of Python, what type of language is going to be well-structured to prevent time loss, not to improving science or adding value to the corporation, but trying to untangle language specifics. I really think the answer is clear to Python 3.
And from a user perspective, I mean, I'll make a new version of Python available on the cluster, and I won't really announce it, but usually within 1 or 2 weeks, I'll have somebody request, I need packages for this version of Python. And I think if you just give them the option, at least for the researchers, they want to use that new version. They want to move forward because they don't want to have some old version that's a barrier to them performing or completing the research. So at least having the option there in the first place is definitely a good first step.
From an enterprise perspective, I mean, realistically, in Python you leverage so many different packages, but you're not writing everything yourself, which is a great benefit of Python. As the PyPy ecosystem just makes it so much faster, and so you're just going to end up at a point where you're like, well, I'm kind of frozen in this time where I can't really get anything newer, and it's just making my life harder. And I think that's going to actually push enterprises to Python 3 more than anything else.
So I'm going to ask the crowd, who here primarily uses Python 3 over Python 2? Show of hands. Who uses Python 2 over Python 3? And for those of you who didn't raise your hand, are you in the right meeting? So I came across this the other day. This is play around with my AD. JetBrains ran a Python survey, and they said I think they had around 10,000 respondents, and they said 75% of people were saying they use Python 3 more. 25% were using Python 2 over Python 3. How well does this match up to what you guys see in your workplaces?
Well, I'll admit I didn't officially start going full on Python 3 until probably 3, maybe 4 years ago, because we're in air-gapped systems, and the DoD departments are really slow to upgrade because they want to stick with what they know works for as long as they can. I came off of an operational system that was still running Solaris 8 in 2009. So they don't let things go very quickly. And I actually, when I was bringing people on to work on Python, I would have them, even if they knew we were installing Anaconda, we would use Anaconda too, because at least 90% of what we wrote would be compatible with the system Python, so I didn't have to worry about whether or not my sysadmins had everything updated, because that is not always reliable. And it also meant I could take from one air-gapped system, get a trusted download, and take my code over to another system, and I didn't have to worry about whether it was set up yet, and I might lose 10% of what I've written.
That applies to my case as well. It seems that of the proof of concept work that I can do on an unclassified system is usually, there's no issue running with Python 3, but again, backporting them into some of these air-gapped systems. Air-gapped systems is where I would probably say, in my case, is probably the majority of them are still in Python 2. I expect that as some of the operating systems push towards later versions of Python, that will basically capture a lot of that as well, because I don't think those in the decision making capabilities or necessarily looking at it as a per language basis, but what all comes with OS updates. Usually,
And these days, I mean, it usually means Red Hat.
right.
The government has been more amenable to pushing towards newer versions of stuff. Recent cybersecurity directives have been pushing to Windows 10. That was the fastest I think I've ever seen them move in terms of like operating system deployment and acceptance. I mean, hopefully this carries forward to other operating systems. As soon as you get, Red Hat 8 approval, you automatically get Python 3 for free as part of that link approval. So I mean, it may not even be more than 2 or 3 years before we start being able to broach that subject in the corporate area.
Do we have an audience question back there?
Yeah, so obviously Python 3 adds a lot of new features and functionality. Is there anything that will be missing from Python 2, or is 3 like 100% improved?
Missing from Python 2.
X-range.
X-range, what range is X-range?
I know.
You never needed range?
I know, I just like typing X-range. That extra X adds a lot of power.
You can make your own experience. I'm just letting you know. Like, it's a thing you can do. You are empowered
Not
to
necessarily.
make poor choices.
So I will say, if there's one thing that, and in practice this usually doesn't go, but in theory, they've taken away the ability, and this didn't start, they started doing it with Python 3 and they've slowly deprecated things. In Python 2, you had the choice of whether you wanted a pure Python implementation or something, or whether you wanted the C implementation of something. And the way that they're supposed to implement it is supposed to be, it tries to do the C and it fails back to the Python implementation. But there might be good reasons why you specifically wanted the Python implementation, or you specifically wanted the C implementation, and if that doesn't work, you don't want it at all, you'll write your own. And that gets a lot harder to do. But I can't say that this has actually hurt me in practice, but usually I like having the option, at least. But then again, Python is also open source, and so even though that's an implementation detail, you can still reach in and say, you know what, I want this, and if I can't have it, then I don't want it at all.
One quick point I can add to that, it's something it's a feature of Python 3 I've learned to appreciate now, but there was, when I first made the transition over, there were cases such as what was previously returned to me as a list now came out as a generator, and I had to cast those to lists, and a few other little types of minor things like that. It's not, in retrospect, I understand what generators and the iterator tools are providing. I understand and can appreciate the fact that I'm not having to store content in my RAM. I can actually just pull it one at a time. And I see that as providing a functional programming-like capability to that. But at the initial time, I'm trying to keep my code working, and this worked fine in Python 2. Well, what happened? Python 3? Oh, I can't say Python 3. That lasted probably about 1 month, and it actually encouraged me to, like I said, take that near-term pain of figuring it out, and as a result of that, was able to make code that could process much larger arrays of data, but not storing it all locally and appropriately. So I would say that if there were those types of issues that did arise, none of them persisted into a long-term dislike of Python 3. If anything, they resulted in me as an analyst having a little more control, taking more responsibility over what my code is doing, and resulting in more functional, capable code as a result.
Guys, I think we have another question over here.
You've touched on this a little bit already, but what would you say is your favorite feature of Python 3 that just does not exist in Python 2? Like if you're trying to convince a Python 2 developer to make the switch, like what's your leading argument?
That was literally my next question. Good job. I planned to.
Well, so there are several, but the most recent, this is a 3.7, maybe it's 3.6, F-strings, where you can actually, man, that was the one thing I long since abandoned Perl, but in Perl and Bash, man, where you could just say, hey, I'm just show that variable in that string, and then we added F-strings, and I'm happy. But yeah, there are several others like the advanced unpacking that lets you do much more functional things like head, rest of the list, or the rest of the list and tail, and you couldn't do that before in Python 2. And there's a lot more. There's a lot of that like non-local, the non-local identifiers and things like that. So there'll be more functional code and support. And the longer I do this, the more functional my code becomes, and that makes me happy.
I think the worst part about it is that you get used to writing in 3.6 or 3.7 and hopefully 3.8, and then you go back to like, well, I'm on 3.4 because poor life choices, and now everything's broken again. Like, you start getting used to that continued improvement that they keep giving you, and if you aren't in control of every version of Python that you run code on, it's like, oh, well, I feel constrained. It's like I have to do the lowest common denominators, I have to do things the harder way, even though I know there's a better way. I think that's probably the biggest reason to stay up to date on your Python version of your code base. There's a lot of convenience functions that are being added right now, and it's great.
Not an endorsement of one specific version of Python 3, but I heard tell that Red Hat 8 will probably end up settling on Python 3.6. So if that pushes you to help solidify your decision for the midterm, that might be a good place to land your Python version for a while. And I'm pretty fond of 3.6. It seems like the dust has settled. The pains of async IO have kind of worked out. The keywords got added, and more awkward code.
I will say it's pretty easy to install their version of Python.
No, it is.
That is a really nice thing about Python. It's not overly complicated. You can just go download it and compile it, and now you have whatever version of Python you want.
In my case, the asynchronous async IO capabilities, that was really, I guess, my favorite portion of that. Not necessarily because it was a gap that existed previously, but it was being able to have concurrent programming capability in the language itself forced me as a user developer to, I guess, have a better knowledge of where the dependencies are in my code and where do I need to have certain sections. Basically, to have a better read on where I may be inappropriately introducing latency or dependency between sections. The async IO takes care of that. So just having that language freedom is like a new bag of words in a grammatical language. It's a new way of kind of expressing yourself. Really, it opens. I'll step out on a limb here. I think when a language encourages better thinking in the developer, even if there are some near-term concerns with that, without completely breaking back compatibility, I see that as positive, progressive.
Along those same lines, but a bit more nebulous, is Python 3 is a much more consistent language, and by being able to deprecate a lot of things. If you work with other developers, most of us work with other developers. If it's not all your code, then there's not. One of the Zen of Python rules is there should be one obvious way to do it, and there wasn't always one obvious way to do it. There was what everybody said, well, this is the Pythonic way, but we had a lot of crap that we had decided, well, that's not really what we wanted. And so now we've got a much more strictly standardized language, and little things like that you wouldn't think about, like having parentheses for your print statement, print functions. I don't know print statements anymore. having parentheses for your print functions lets you now do much cleaner line wrapping than you could do with the old percent style print statements. So you end up with much cleaner code, and so it's much easier to work with other developers than I personally think Python 2 was.
I know for me, type hinting has been a big one. I was introduced in 3.5. Have any of you guys played around with type hinting?
I have since you talked about it.
We're just getting started with some of the static typing, encouraging people that you can either learn your bugs in your code early, compile time, or you can wait and maybe it will come out from a user tripping this one use case, that latter one being at least 10 times more time expensive to fix. So in terms of just being able to preclude things from precluding bad things from happening in how it's structured, I also that. So that's another, and really when we talk about static typing checks, that's one of the biggest arguments I've seen in terms of Python being more enterprise ready. So that's a close second in my book as far as why Python.
So earlier we were talking, and Morgan, you made a point, I think you kind of alluded to it, of it's the future functions you're more interested in, because by staying up to date with Python 3, you get those. You want to elaborate on those a bit?
Yeah, the perfect example is the F strings, in my opinion, but who knows what the next thing's going to be. And yeah, there you go.
What was that?
Sorry, I didn't speak loud enough. The becomes operator? I'll talk about that when he's finished.
Yeah.
It's my new favorite.
I think my biggest point though is that if you're committing to staying up to date with Python, even if you get up to 3.6 and like, well, I'll follow my OS rollout, but I'm still going to keep updating, you'll still start getting that continued improvement without breaking your code, hopefully. Because hopefully you're not doing weird things. And that's a huge benefit. Like you now have cleaner code, you now have faster development speeds, and you get used to more newer functions that we're going to come out with, and it's going to be a lot more usable, I think, more consistent.
So who here is trying to do an assignment in the middle of like a for loop and then use it inside the for loop? Who would like to do that? No, nobody? Am I the only person?
I'll raise my hand. You got me.
Yeah, C++ you could assign things, and yeah, basically just points.
So, as some of us are aware, one of the pains is like, maybe have a while block where you take some data from a buffer and then you process it. Well, it's kind of hard to do because Python technically doesn't let you do assignments like in that while loop. So in comes this new operator, becomes, which is : equals, which don't confuse it with the go : equals operator. It allows you to do an inline assignment inside a block like that and have it carry on into the child scope, which is very nice for reducing a little 1 or 2 lines here and there, but it's all about writing cleaner code.
So, Chris, I'm going to throw up a code snippet. Let's see if this works.
Would that be the old way of doing things? X equals foo, while X is not none, you use that.
So now you would do while X : equals foo is not none, then you can use X in there.
So,
Like
that.
let's get the new way up so everyone can see it.
I don't think you have to use that and. I think you could say X foo is not none. And get rid of that whole and X piece there.
Then this,
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
so they're still trying to settle on the syntax on that, something along these lines.
so this is the becomes operator you're talking about right here, right?
Well, if you're checking against none, you can use false and just leave out the is not none.
Where did the loop go?
There should be a loop.
It should be while. I'm live coding, bear with me. I'm features I don't know.
So this is one of the neat things with this is also compatible with list comprehensions and generators. So you can do slightly more advanced things in your generator, in your one-line generators.
So I believe this is proposed for 3.8. And so I've heard the becomes operator or the walrus operator, which I like.
But I mean, it is kind of fun to read the pile mailing list every once in a while. They're not quite as bad as, say, the old school Linus Torvalds mailing list.
No one's as bad as the old school.
Well, he apparently went to see a counselor. He's better now.
That just means he stopped swearing.
Well, did you see the one he did post-counseling? That was an amazing thing. He just said, "I'm very disappointed in you, and I won't accept code from you until you show that you can do better." And I'm like, I'm not sure which is worse, a guy just cussing at me and then saying, "Let's get back to work," or a guy just saying, "I'm very disappointed in you. I will not accept code from you until you show me, demonstrate, you can do better."
I have enough father issues. I don't need to see those kinds of businesses do. So, any other features in Python 3 that you come to like, that you want to talk about?
We talked about async. We talked about an upcoming one. We've already got rid of the upcoming operator. What else?
There's enums, data classes.
Yeah, I was about to say having a real enum type because categorical data is an actual thing.
Don't work taking it in your own library.
Yeah, and an extension. That's an extension of the meta class of the meta class improvements.
You can also you can fake an enum in Python too with like a namespace.
Where's they have a backport on PyPy that you can go install. I think it's like enum 3 or something like that. It's like, oh, okay, this is for Python 2.7, so you can pretend that you're Python 3. There's a lot of those packages out there.
It can't be quite as robust as the Python 3 anywhere because
it has consequences.
It's specifically possible because it changes the meta classes. Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons you couldn't have an enum in Python 2 was because if you have this is the example that they wrote, if you had a shape enum, you could have 2 square values because Python wouldn't stop you from assigning over your square value. And now, if you actually subclass enum, because of the metaclass features, it will catch that and say, you can't define this twice, which is not a thing you see anywhere else in Python. And that's specifically because metaclasses let you do those checks at
and that kind of gives a good reason to move to Python 3 too. It's like, yeah, you can backport things, and people do actively do it. And every time I've taken a backport back into 2.7, but there's consequences or limitations of this backport because you just didn't know how to implement this without that back-end support for whatever that feature was. It's like, well, when you get to this case, sorry. That seems to be a pretty common consequence in backwards from 3 to 2 to 7.
I found that in Python 3, more errors are caught for me by Python, which is fantastic. Have you guys been seeing that too?
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, Python 2 actually, as I was literally about to say, Python 2 really trusted the developer more, and Python 3 sort of figured out that wasn't always the right thing to do, and so maybe sometimes we should catch these things.
Anybody who's ever seen my code knows I'm not to be trusted. So.
Did they just take your function and you come out of the module and put a try block in front of it?
Someone said to put 2, they don't know why.
Try, except else.
Yeah, I still will look at code and go, who wrote this horrible thing?
Oh, it was me.
I think my Git blame just always aliases that it's you. It's just you. So how hard has it been for you guys to migrate to Python 3? Are there certain obstacles or tips and tricks you want to share? Challenges, success stories?
Tip number 1, if your intern comes to you and says, this code looks great, and you see the interpreter's Python 2, you slap the intern's hand and say, go back, change the interpreter, fix everything that's wrong with that, and then we'll talk. Start all of your new projects with Python 3 if you're able to, and you're just eliminating the technical debt from yourself. And where's the Python dev clock? Like what, 9 months, 8 months, 10 months?
Yeah.
Always test with Python.
If you have like one of those digital signage boards in like your little dev group that like flips between pages, let's just put this up here. Just every once in a while, just go and point at it and stare at everybody.
Yeah, if you're a developer with more than 5 years in, this is the perfect time to sit on your hands and say, I'm not going to start this until you give me, Anaconda 3 or whatever on my system, because I'm just going to have to redo this work.
In my case, there was I think the integer division was probably, having to trace that down was probably the most painful. But again, most of these types of issues were more within about 1 to 2 weeks, I would say burned through 80% of the types of linguistic snafus that were baked in there. And again, Unicode support, integer division, a few of those just kind of handful of small things were really satisfying.
I think from reading the differences in string types, a lot of people are afraid that that's what's going to break their code. And unless you're doing some fairly esoteric stuff, or you were already having to deal with internationalization issues, already having to deal with Unicode, that's not going to be as big a difference as you think. But that ended up not biting me as much. The thing that bit me probably the biggest, the Python 2 to 3 caught almost everything. And there were a couple instances where, like you mentioned earlier, I was using something that returned a list, like filter or map. And I was using it like a list instead of iterating over it, which is what I should have been doing to begin with. And so, the easy first fix to that was just slap list on it and then come back, put a to-do on there and come back later and make the code better.
That's the nice thing. You do have those types of shortcut options available, even if you're not. One option is telling everyone, okay, we're going to stop what we're doing and get everyone comfortable using iterators. But there are some capabilities to patch that. And basically, I'm not saying all projects can necessarily absorb, transitioning everyone over, but even if you need to have a short-term fix in the form of just hard casting it to lists, straightforward, easy to do.
I disagree. I think unless your project is short-term, I think everybody can afford it, because the later you wait to do it, the more expensive it gets to do.
I'm not saying that would be preferred.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to. It's as a developer, one of our jobs, or we'll say as an engineer, one of our jobs is to convince the higher ups that this will cost less if we do it now. And yeah, it's going to be painful, but it's going to be more painful later.
And you don't have to be religious about it. I mean, these are just facts. In 10 months, 5 days, 11 hours, 60 minutes, and 42 seconds.
It's 41 seconds now.
What about 30? Are we 30? Warming when we're 30. I mean, we're going to reach a time where it's a good business decision, and you're going to start talking about, well, in 11 months, now you're going to have to spend 40 man hours rewriting this code. Whereas if we do onesie twosies here, from future import print function or statement or whatever it's called, print function, and just these onesie twosie things will start you down this path. Or changing out some of your libraries aren't Python 3 ready right now. Starting to use compatibility libraries that you can shim out later. Did I hear
You did. You did.
And I
Python 6.
I was just about to ask, what's your thought on 6 package?
It is great,
but
I am so tired of it. I just don't want to do it anymore.
it does get annoying when you see like every time you install a library from him, installing 6 version, you know, whatever.
And it's, you know, a lot of times where you just have to put more effort than it needs to. The whole point of using Python 3 is to not be
like URL parsing or
like you're always stuck in Python 2.7 compatibility links. Like you're not getting any of the benefits. You know you can't use all these new awesome features. You can't use a data class. You can't use strings. You can't use async.io. You have to use 6. You're basically programming in 6 now to run on 2 different interpreters, and you're picking the worst of all the features.
This will be really awkward when 12 comes out in like another 5 years.
Don't talk about that yet.
So the way I see it, like 6 was great for maybe the first 5 years of Python 3. Now, Python 3 is 11 years old. I don't know if everyone knows that. It's been around for 11 years now. Like, that's like middle school. So, like
6 was there to support the library developers, the big library developers. It really wasn't supposed to be meant for end users like us. And sometimes, I mean, it's there, so people are like, well, why can't we just do this? And so you sort of capitulate, and then a couple of years later you regret that because it's all over your code.
What if you are a library developer? I mean, you don't feel like it's still important to...
If you still have to support 2.7, then that makes sense, though in 10 months you don't need to, so it's okay.
It depends. If you're are you a library developer inside of an organization, or are you a library developer to the community at large?
Yeah, in an
I mean, are you NumPy or are you SciPy? Then absolutely, then you need to continue to support both for as long as you reasonably can. Although when finally security patches go away, your argument can be, well, we don't want that unsecured code anymore. But inside of an organization, I mean, yeah, okay, one person really can't force the organization to change, but you have 2 people on your side, and you know, 5 really annoying, loud Python administrators. You know, if you're the smart guy in the organization, that helps. You've got to be a leader. That's what it comes down to.
What do you think about using talks to test against multiple versions, testing your libraries, testing your code?
Absolutely do it. I mean,
even among different versions of 3 and
absolutely do it. Yeah. I mean, until your organization is settled on, or you know, an operating system coming along decides it for you. I mean, I hate to say this about Python 3, like degrading it, but we're kind of like in this wild land of people are choosing Python 3.4 because that's what they built the code base in. People are choosing 3.6, 3.7, maybe 3.8.
I believe 3.4 is going to end of life along with Python 2.7.
Yeah, and you know, that's something you have to do no matter what language you're working in, and you have to make a decision. You know, do I continue to support both of these versions, or do I abandon it? You know, I'm converting some code because we're going from Red Hat 6 to Red Hat 7. I'm going from GCC 4.4.7 to GCC 4.8.5. There were some major things that got broken between those because they stopped supporting the non-conforming code and the 2-pass templates. If anybody that's C++ developer has any clue what I'm talking about there, you know, right now I'm going to have to try to make the choices. Do I try to make this? You know, I can make the code conformant so it'll still compile, but there are some things that it's going to be really hard to get. You know, mostly in my build system because it's a custom build system. How do I get the build system to support both? And that's, you know, I think the right answer to that is, well, I'm going to set it to build on Red Hat 7, and then we're going to switch everything to Red Hat 7, and everything else dies.
We saw to some extent even in Python 3 versions, some of the async.io syntax, there's generator expressions, there was a lot of basically it's still some forming in the community to a set of conventions as far as what syntax are to be used, whether I'm using decorator types of generator expression formation. So I think you'll still see some of that developmental effort is standards, I'll say standards, are somewhat being converged upon in this progression. So I would say certainly would recommend testing among the different Python 3 versions to make sure things are being worked out. And some of these, again, as they're still kind of finding their way with what form to be, I guess, standardized for the async.io library, I think we'll still see some of that, some deprecation of what was previously available in Python 3.4, things like that. So I would recommend that be tested regularly.
Before you ask your question, I like your Datadog shirt.
And now you may ask your question.
Okay, I work in multiple languages, and I find that that's good, you know, keep your mind engaged, having to switch back and forth. When I do that, though, I realize that there are other features of other languages that I wish Python had. The one that you guys have all been hinting around is just how hard it is to go between versions. And in other languages, there are transpilers that can help with that, allow you to write in the latest, but then transpile backwards. That doesn't seem to be available in Python that I know of. But what other language features do you wish Python had, based on your experience with languages that you're using as a hobby or at your job?
Well, at the risk of being silly, you write any Java code?
No.
Oh, well, it's okay, I'm with you there. But I feel like Python took the opposite approach. Instead of having like transpilers, it's like the reference Python implementation can just be written in many other languages. So now you have these weird side Pythons like, I'm going to cough if I say it too much, Jython, where you can write Python code and load Java directly into it because it's technically running in the JVM. I feel like that was like some people's solutions to, man, wouldn't it be great if I could write Python but also have all my Java libraries. I know I'm not necessarily directly answering your question, but I feel like that was like part of the community's answer to this question was, I would love to use this language feature. Well, why don't I? I can write it over there and then call it up from this other Python implementation that nobody incidentally happens to use.
At the risk of maybe, like I said, explode, even MATLAB will run Python. So
You had to mention the M word, didn't you? We discussed this before. You weren't allowed to.
And yeah, I think you'll see a lot of the other. Python wasn't originally, as just an analyst, wasn't really, I guess, kind of my first love. I first cut my teeth on the M word MATLAB many years ago. And I like how syntactically straightforward it was. And over time I learned you can easily override those operators and make your own kind of grammar, if you will, in a program that has all that syntactic sugar of MATLAB. You can do that in Python. And that kind of made the case for it for me. And then over time, using the Eclipse IDE, I really enjoyed being able to quickly be able to tap, select things over. And well, it was basically trying to use non-proprietary development environments. When the Jupyter notebooks came out, you had that same capability in Python. And when it comes to other interfacing other languages, there's direct support options such as Python 11 if you're making Python talk to C++, inherent in Python. And also, nowadays, if I absolutely must have something run exclusively that I'm having trouble getting to do so in Python, maybe some of the Java code that was not supported by some of the other already available Python libraries, I'll just spawn it in a Docker container. And for my cases, again, this is kind of more of just what I found worked for me, just have Python send a URL request to that Docker container and say, hey, Java code, proprietary code, MATLAB, whatever, here's your inputs, please run and give me the results back using Python requests. Now that's not a general purpose fix for all cases, but in my cases, that's how I've seen it work. I've not been able to do that with programs such as MATLAB, being able to easily interact with other codes or spawn them up in separate instances. So that's just, I guess, how I approach it.
So I'll try to answer your question more directly. So one of the nice things about Python is both because Python syntax itself is so flexible and because it's you can very easily access C. Any feature, let me rephrase that, most features that you might want, if you want them bad enough, you could implement them and you could probably even get them added to the standard. All I have to do is write the pep, or somebody help me write the pep, and hey, now there's a new language feature. But looking at some things that I don't necessarily expect that we're going to see would be more support for functional style programming. I'd like to see tail call optimization. That would be fantastic. I'd like to see built-in support for things like partial function application instead of having to call it from a library. And outside of the functional language world, this is maybe this is a little less Python and a little more application support, but I'd love to see native support for Python in the browser.
That's a
Yeah. Like I said, things we're not going to get.
There's been some migration towards that. Some specific packages. Again, these are side packages, not core part of the language, but things like PyIodine. You can actually run JavaScript. You can run Python code, including NumPy, straight in your browser. So I think we're seeing motion towards that. We're even seeing some of the mission transpilers. I've noticed, I'm speaking a bit out of my league here, there's been some motion towards that with some of the LLVM compiler support, being able to take Python code and write directly using things like WebAssembly. So I think we'll probably see some convergence towards that capability you described in terms of kind of a one-size-fits-all version of Python. But again, it still has some way to go.
I don't know if necessarily it's not a strong use case of transpiling Python, though, as you see it in like JavaScript language. TypeScript is really pushing forward JavaScript. Do something fundamentally different, whereas Python 2 and 3 is just a lot of changes that are good for making Python 3 a little bit easier to use than Python 2.7. Whereas TypeScript is like, let's rethink where we're going and really push JavaScript closer to something a lot more useful. And so transpiling in that case is like, well, I still need to support everything at all times because people are stuck with the DOM and what the browser gives you. So that makes a lot more sense than like, okay, I've got my Python binary, I can choose what to run, which most of us kind of have that opportunity to choose.
I feel like there's like less holy wars in the Python community as opposed to like the JavaScript community. It just feels.
Do you want to talk about Flask versus Django?
Before you do, I would point out that there are two cases where you see transpiling. One big reason you don't see it in Python is when you start looking at the compiler interpreter side of things. When compiling is a natural part of your process, it's a lot easier to inject a transpiler into that. So when you look at something like Java or anything that's compiled in Java anything else that's compiled, then transpiling is a little easier. And the second case is when your language is terrible, like JavaScript, then you will write anything else and compile it to the thing you don't want to write. That's why nobody writes assembly anymore, because it's painful.
I'm going to point out that I saw a JavaScript developer smile at that. And then you said it was terrible.
Who here's a JavaScript developer? Raise your hands. Anyone? Nobody?
No one will admit it.
Okay, who here's a JavaScript developer who's afraid to admit it?
One of the most popular books for JavaScript is JavaScript, the good parts.
Like JavaScript Definitive Guide and JavaScript, the good parts.
Yes.
I would recommend it if you like to just play around with the packaging. Again, I can't say how far this will go, but give the PyIodine project a try. It's really neat to be able to just pull down code and put Python code in there. How extendable is it? I can't speak to that. Would it in the long term necessarily be a good investiture of your time? Can't say that for sure, but just being able to kind of prototype code run in your browser without installing a single thing it's a fun way of advertising what Python is on.
Well, I think there's a person over here with a question.
Someone behind me.
I can't. I just saw the hand.
Get your questions in now. We're wrapping up soon.
So you asked earlier who writes Python 2 and who writes Python 3 in the wrong room. I don't do it production-wise, but I did have a question, and first is kind of a rhetorical question, as it seems a little late for this. It would seem to me that it's kind of like, well, shouldn't we quit writing in Fortran 77? I mean, it seems like why are we having a discussion? Why aren't we writing Python 3?
Could you come back to work with me and talk to them about that?
That's an excellent question.
But the real question I have is, did anything bite the dust along the way? Was there something done in Python 2 that basically somebody looked at and said, it's just not worth the effort, there are better tools out there that are being written in Python 3, so I'm just not even going to bother making that transition?
I think Python 3 was more this iteration of change and addition. I don't really think of Python 3 as this like great removal of some feature that caused anger. It's not like, Angular 1 versus Angular 2 in the JavaScript world where it's like, oh yeah, by the way, now your implementation language is 100% different, you know, have fun. Python 3 was not like that. And I'm loath to compare it like that because, I mean, we've talked a little bit about, you know, generators are now more of a thing, you know, wrap your code in a list for some compatibility. You know, the print statement was probably the most obvious one people probably had to fix a whole bunch of. But I can't think of anything that it just straight up removed.
The only thing I can think of would be the Psycho library, but that, so for those who may not be aware, the Psycho library was it was sort of, man, it's hard to explain what it actually was. You could import it, and just by importing it, it sped up your code immensely. A lot of it had to do with overriding built-in things with much faster implementations that were often in pure Python. But that got abandoned by the developer because he essentially kept running into walls where he couldn't do anymore, and so he abandoned that and started the PyPy project. And so I would actually argue that it was because Python 2 that he had to abandon that, because there really were fewer options for what you could do. And the downside of that is now you actually have to change your interpreter. You can't just import a library and boom, your code's 10 times faster. You know, I saw somebody actually went in Queens where it would run for 20 minutes and then they turned on Psycho and it would run in 30 seconds. You know, it was crazy when you get there. And you can still get that, but you have to now run a different interpreter.
In my case, I just observed a few hacks, if you will, that are now I think supplanted by what's inherently available in Python 3, mostly due to asynchronous capabilities. So if there's anything that was stood down, it was this kind of side spiral developments that were in many cases underperformant or redundant. But I agree with what Panel said. I have not seen anything hard stood down in Python 2 that I particularly miss. If anything, it's standardizing things and avoiding holy wars like my spiral versus your spiral.
That's a really good thing though, like, you know, async is a good option. Like, you know, previously it was continuous snap and twisted, and it's like, now we change it into more of a standard, you know, we kind of pretty like twisted and kind of incorporated it into Python 3, so now it's less.
Pretty twisted a ton.
Yeah.
And so in 3.7 we have data classes. For a large part, I don't need the adders package anymore.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing a lot of packages getting deprecated in favor of more core support.
Right. That shows the support of the Python core development group to the community when they see that the community really wants them. A good example of this is there's an operator for matrix multiplication because none of the operators were like, tired of typing that as a function. I would just like to add.
So, I have a question over here.
Yes, thank you. I sat up front because I'm hard of hearing.
Not because
so how many in the audience are using a pentascale computer? How many in the audience are using an exascale computer? All right. I'll keep my Fortran 77.
Are you talking like in the concept of like, you know, a large HPC type cluster or?
Well, this is the issue. I have nothing against Python. I want this development community to grow and prosper. But you're building interface applications between the human being and the computer. But then I have to go solve a geophysics problem or a biotechnology problem or something else, and they give me an exascale computer and I have to use it. And I have to know a language that will make it work.
Well, I mean,
I have to be good at it.
Even craze these days support modern C++. I mean, Fortran 77 is a terrible argument for that.
Well, I'm not going to talk about Fortran 77.
Yeah.
We're going to write good code in C. We're going to write reasonably good code in C++. Don't laugh.
I like you.
When I take my C++ code and move it to a hardware accelerator, I have to get rid of all those instantiations of some variable array copy that C++ made for me and replace it with something that's explicit in C, because my tools, I don't have the luxury of pushing down and duplicating data structures in hardware.
Well, so I'll actually make your same argument in the other direction. If you go down to embedded computing, I mean, Python's not a good solution for embedded computing. Even C++ developers in embedded computing don't use the standard template library. So it's all about, yeah, I mean, it's all about, Python's not the tool for everything. everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are certainly going to be cases where you need the most performance you can get, and you need to, if I'm paying $1,000 an hour to run on somebody's, million node supercomputer.
Would you be okay with
Well,
$1,000 an hour? I can get you some time.
well then,
Just make it direct.
Even when you do applications in the cloud and you go spawn off 128 or 10,000 processor jobs, then you really want that to run.
right, and it depends on, am I going to go run this once or am I going to go run this over and over and over again? Because, at some point developer time becomes more expensive than computing time.
So there's a world for both of us.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like what we said, Python is our like 80% solution.
So one of the things you do when you have your interns and they learn that Python 3, make them write a little code in C. Okay?
I think my intern's head would catch on fire at this point. I'll get in there. Just
All right.
keep me.
I think we have time for one more question. Adam, you had a question?
It was about PyPy. I mean, you mentioned not liking Jython, but
It's not that I don't like Jython, it's that I don't like Java.
right. Have you noticed any performance impact to Python 3 versus Python 2?
So initially, there was actually quite a bit of performance impact. It was, I don't remember what the actual scale was.
It was slower.
It was, well, I mean, it was slower, but I forget to what degree. It was a lot slower. But from what I understand, and I haven't gone and done any really close comparisons, but from what I understand, Python 3 is now at least as fast in all, maybe a very tiny percentage of cases, and faster in most cases.
So Python 3.6 has met or beat the Python 2 benchmarks except for startup time. By starting up Python 3, it's slower than Python 2, but all the other benchmarks, Python 3.6 is the first one that was faster.
I mean, that might be an acceptable trade-off, maybe.
And it goes back to this gentleman's comment. There's a use case for a lot of different things, and you can't say that you have one solution that fits all.
I'm gonna argue that maybe past the first, maybe up to 3.2 or 3.3, maybe speed was your argument to stick with it, but we were only a couple of years into Python 3 development. At this point, if your argument is, well, the startup time with Python 3 is too slow, Python is not your tool. But I have a really good friend who is writing code that pulls raw images at like they saturate a 10 gigabit connection. And he pulls off of these high-speed cameras, and he uses Python. He started his code in Python, and he got it up to about a gigabit a second. And then he slowly went in and replaced the pieces that actually had to be optimized with C code or Python or calling C types, or even going in and writing using the actual C backend of Python. But it meant that he had a first version that they could actually use in like a month of weekends, as opposed to if I'm a pretty competent C++ developer, and I don't think a month of weekends will be enough for me to write that, because it's just too much boilerplate and too much overhead. And Python just had the libraries that he needed, and he just threw them in and replaced them like that.
All right. Well, we are at our time, so thank you very much, gentlemen. Python 3 is, we have a death clock up here for Python 2. Libraries are dumping Python 2 support. I know Django, NumPy, Jupyter Notebooks, a lot of them are saying we're not going to support new features. PyTest even is saying we're not going to do new features Python 3. So I'm sure many of you have to get back to your work. If you have any questions, feel free to come on up. Or do you have...
We need to thank AdTran for hosting this meeting.
Oh yeah.
So thank you, AdTran, for hosting us. Pizza was great, so thank you, AdTran. And let's have a round of applause for our speakers. I hope you guys like this. This was our first panel discussion. I'm interested in feedback. I had a lot of fun here. I've only was on the verge of tears maybe twice out of terror, so we're good. Seriously, thank you everyone for coming. We at HSV.py always need speakers, so we have lightning talks coming up. If you're interested in doing a 5-minute talk in April or a 10-minute talk in April, come talk to me or Ashley. We have talk slots. We're looking for something a little bit extra, maybe in May or June, so please let us know. We're always on the lookout for speakers or sponsors or venues.